can make it.
So here we are in Quest of Truth, where we left
So
off last week. Here's,
with the blue,
yeah,
okay. But to return to a less pleasant subject, namely events in Africa, the shocking, bloody fiasco of Congo's independence illustrates only too sadly how impossible parliamentary institutions are for savages. Oh my goodness, who have not been in any way prepared or educated up to civilized standards of conduct. But, sorry, if we could but realize we shape our destinies by the actions of our past and present lives, and that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and turning the other cheek, all apply equally to the laws that govern life. According to the law, to karma, or the law of karma, cause and effect, if a man commits murder in one incarnation, his victim will probably kill him in his next incarnation.
oops.
One wonders what karmic debt the Congo has. Also, what the white man will have to pay for his past and present misdeeds in Africa. Not only in Africa, but elsewhere, for we know how the Americans treated the Red Indians and how Australians treated their Aboriginals. Really, it seems that New Zealand has the only clean slate, for there the whites were beginning to, whites from the beginning treated the Maoris justly and humanely. When in Australia, I was horrified by the plight of the Aboriginals who have survived and who seem to care. As for South Africa, I confess I see nothing to hope for unless the change of heart that Baba has promised takes place here. But maybe this end of the great continent of, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble, but maybe this end of the great continent of Africa may be totally submerged in coming catastrophe, which might perhaps be the best solution for what now seems a quite intractable problem. Whom the gods destroy, they first make mad. The need for the avatar. Wherever virtue is on the decline, and evil and injustice spread abroad in the world, I take on human form for the establishment of righteousness and the destruction of the evildoer. I am born from age to age. On all sides, we hear people crying out for peace as more and more nuclear missiles and other weapons of war multiply and increase. New strategic positions are being taken up, and every preparation is being made to, for the final showdown, which has already begun. As we watch the international chessboard and see the nations moving their pawns, we know that at the same time, peoples and governments are desperately searching for the means of escape from nuclear war that would annihilate humanity and poison our planet. Nobody wants war. not even those whose fanaticism aims at the world conquest. Yet there is war and rumors of war everywhere. We all know that in the modern warfare, there is no victor and no vanquished. Meanwhile, the peoples of all countries are being drained of their strength and wealth because of fighting and keeping up a suicidal arm race. Life has become a nightmare. While thousands of refugees, while hundreds of refugees and hundreds of thousands of refugees drift helplessly like flotsam and jetsam on the turbulent waters of this world. And how many of us ever give these helpless beings a thought? In the study of our being, Western history can give us nothing but the superficial outlines of past societies, constricted to fit the particular ideas of the historian. There seems to be little pattern, as it were, of God's design amongst men, largely because the historian does not look for this. But we have exceptions like Toynbee. Does not the history of Western philosophy also indicate the individual ideas of philosophers with little understanding of their laws and principles? Yet, by their intellectual brilliance, these historians and philosophers are able to dominate the minds of the general public, even though their theories are those of men of straw. Only occasionally do we get thinkers who are untrammeled by the encasing walls of their colleges. Neither historians nor philosophers can help us to grapple with the dynamic factors of modern technical civilization which confront us today. We are now faced with systems of thought which deny the innate spiritual heritage of man. While these systems seek to emancipate individuals from religious discipline, they offer no compensation for man's loss of spiritual values. Hence the decline of civilization under the dialectical materialism. Clearly, the only understanding of the present world can conflict, and we will, that can conflict, that we can get, will be, and wait, clearly the only understanding of the present world conflict that we can get will be the study of spiritual values, and not from the Western approach. I think I'll let you take over.
Oh, thanks very much, Tina. That was awesome. So far, we are obliged to turn to the age-old Eastern thought, which can help us. We must know that the world is passing through an avataric period, the sign of which is universal unrest and dissatisfaction with present day life. Man has to accept the truth that underlying the realities of life, there are fundamental laws and spiritual principles that cannot be violated or ignored. Only if these principles are respected can humanity rebuild on a broader and more equitable basis. What sound economic and political structure can there be without an enduring ethical foundation. The conflicting conceptions of life and differing social and ideological experiments of our age have done nothing but bring about more wars and enhance the general misery of mankind. How can the present welter of confused ideas produce that inner and outer harmony in human relations, indispensable for cooperation in ordered and peaceful progress? A divided attitude on ethical problems is characteristic of governments and international bodies of this age, where conscience in regard to human rights plays no part. I notice this particularly in South Africa, where the gap between words and actions has never been so great. Hardly ever do precepts seem to be put into practice. Is not the prevailing characteristic of modern man the decay of his conscience? I remember in my youth how my father took a leading part in the defense of Dreyfus by the book he wrote on the case. Dreyfus was a French Jew and an officer in the French army. He was accused of passing military secrets to the Germans, convicted, and sent to the penal settlement at Devil's Island. Zola and other prominent Frenchmen took up the innocent man's cause. The case lasted 12 years, for French government itself was involved in the disgrace of it all. The case aroused the conscience of the whole of Europe, including Russia, before belated justice was done. Today, the most monstrous crimes take place behind the Iron Curtain. Men are promised safe conduct by their governments and are then kidnapped, murdered, or executed with or without after a mock trial. Atrocities of all kinds take place with comparatively little protest from the free countries. Human rights are being continually ignored. Mr. Spock, the Belgian foreign minister, said some time back, quote, in the present United Nations setup, everything short of war is allowed. Treaties may be violated. Promises can be broken. A nation licensed to menace its neighbors or to perpetuate any kind of trick upon it, just as long as there is no actual war. It is not doublethink and double talk with the totalitarian regimes only. We have it elsewhere too. It has been said already, the answer is that we must be taught to perceive spiritual values. There is only one reality. There is only one truth which can unify the heart and produce love and harmony in our relations with one another. That reality is God. We see our world falling apart. How can we make a new world unless we have men to make it? And how can we have new men without new hearts? We surely need a new order in which politicians do not stand alone, but are guided by saints and sages. During the last 2,000 years, there have been many prophecies of some great impending change at the end of this century. We know that many seers in different ages have predicted stupendous upheavals and vast metamorphoses of every kind in preparation for the new era. The world has reached a point in its development where the same forces that caused the great Atlantean island continent to sink beneath the waves are once more active. It is interesting to note that the Observer, towards the end of 1954, had a short story competition. It was set for a story relating to the year AD 2500. There were from 2 to 3,000 entries. Needless to say, the story offered a theme providing wide scope for imaginative variations. But the most remarkable feature of the entries was the somber note to be heard, like a sort of ground bass in a very high proportion of them. Nearly 80% of the competitors, at the rough estimate, assumed that the people of AD 2500 were living after some kind of catastrophe, generally an atomic war, which had devastated most of the earth. Wherever we look, we see chaos and strife. Let's just read that little asterisk referring to Atlantis. Research on the subject of Atlantis is being carried out, etc., etc. The papers in every country except the totalitarian states where free opinion is suppressed are filled with personal, national, and international strife. As we look, there is a sense of helplessness, as if an inexorable destiny was driving us to our doom. The only redeeming feature of the present worldwide insanity of governments and peoples is that we are at the very end of the last days of the old dispensation. Gloria, could you unmute and continue, please?
Yeah, thank you. Since a universal divine manifestation always coincides with the spiritual renaissance of man, the period nearing this stupendous event is invariably one in which humanity suffers the agony of approaching rebirth. It is not sufficiently realized what is the internal and external significance of such a cosmic spring cleaning. Amongst other things, the manifestation reacts not only to the good and bad sanskaras, parent impressions left on the mind by past and present actions, desires, or thoughts, and parent of individuals, but also to the collective karma or destiny of a country or nation. The direct divine influence can bring about great changes in world affairs, causing the rise and fall of nations and of economic systems in keeping with their karma, as best suits the divine plan conceived as a whole. Towards this goal, statesmen, politicians, and great men in public life are more directly, though unconsciously, influenced to bring about the adjustment of social and economic life. All human suffering, whether individual or collective, caused by wars or great natural catastrophes, is neither accidental nor coincidental, for man has to conform to the law which governs the universe. The universe is built upon God's eternal and immutable law, and when man puts himself in opposition to God and his law, he has created opposition to his own higher self and divine nature. It is then when wholesale violation of his laws takes place, as is happening today, that God again descends from the infinite to take on human form as a recurring divine manifestation on earth, to win back man to himself. Such a divine manifestation is an avatar or Messiah. It is not commonly known that there are always men on earth who are truth incarnate and therefore the fountainheads of all spiritual wisdom, being themselves all wisdom, all power, and divine love. Such men, after their death, are hailed as saviors of mankind, but during their lives, they are invariably misunderstood and often persecuted with inconceivable malignity. These men mostly live and work in silence, unheard and unsung. But at a time of deep crisis in human affairs, there is always one, the avatar, who comes out into the world and, in emerging, creates a great landmark in spiritual history. Such, in the comparatively recent historical past, were Zoroaster, Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, and there must have been many more in bygone ages. According to Meher Baba, Zoroaster lived thousands of years ago and came before Rama and Krishna. Solomon of Dal talks of the tradition of a special fountain of water called Glosha or of Horim, by the side of which Zoroaster predicted to his disciples the coming of the Messiah, Jesus. Even the apocryphal New Testament in one passage says that Zoroaster prophesied the coming of Christ. Moses foretold the advent of Jesus. Mohammed and Jesus alike indicated that they, or one like them, would come again. The followers of Muhammad are now expecting the return of the Mahdi, and the Hindus are watching for the 10th or Kalki avatar, while Christians look for the second advent. Today, the Buddhists are gathering together in expectation of the return of the Buddha. For did not Gautama say, quote, there have been Buddhas after me, quote, end. Indeed, he predicted that the greatest of all would bear the name of Maitreya. He also stated, quote, 2,500 years after me, my law will have known its end. Another Buddha, the greatest of them all, will come into the world. He will regenerate it and establish the new law. End of quote. It is important to know that the word Maitreya means friend, and Meher Baba's prevailing characteristic is his friendliness. People are made to feel that he is their friend and that his divinity is no barred to camaraderie and ordinary social intercourse. He will joke and laugh with us as if we were his equals. In fact, the word friend suits and describes the master perfectly. In speaking of the Buddha, one is reminded of how Meher Baba once, referring to his childhood, remarked, quote, yet one day, when a friend gave me a small booklet on the Buddha, I opened it. The book at the then I forgot about it and years passed by.
Oh, Gloria, do you mind just reading from the top of the page again? Because your audio disappeared for me. Maybe Marian heard it, I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe starting the last page, because the paragraph is starting the last page. Yeah. Okay. In speaking of the Buddha, one is reminded of how Meher Baba once, referring to his childhood, remarked, quote, "Yet one day when a friend gave me a small booklet on the Buddha, I opened the book at the place that told about the second coming of the Buddha as Maitreya. Then I realized all of a sudden, I am that, actually, and I felt it deep within me. Then I forgot about it and years passed by," end of quote.
Whoops.
The second advent is now universally expected, but in what form? Meher Baba has explained the influence of the saber in the discourses. He says that the avatar appears in different forms under different names in different times and in different parts of the world. His reappearance always coincides with an age of upheaval such as we are passing through now. Since the avatar is God descended into human form, he adjusts the standards of human values which are in need of readjustment. Since he is beyond duality and the play of opposites, the smallest detail may command his sympathy, and the greatest catastrophe leaves him comparatively unmoved. Furthermore, he knows that all these things are but illusions, which he has transcended and which others likewise transcend. He knows that we are bound by our ignorance and has come to enlighten us and release us from our bondage. He's not concerned with death, but he knows that we do not cease to exist thereafter. He's not concerned with destruction, since he knows this has to precede constructions. He knows all and forgives all. It was in October 1945, when Baba had undergone one of his periods of seclusion, that he referred directly to the upcoming catastrophe. True, he has given many indications from the beginning of his mission of what we are to expect in the near future. A passage from the Wayfarers is appropriate here. There is an asterisk of the Wayfarers.
Oh, it's probably just the
Okay.
publishing.
Oh.
But let's see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the publisher. Yeah. A passage from the Wayfarers is appropriate here. Quote, "On one of these later days, Baba emerged after having sat for many hours in complete seclusion, his face more drawn and weary than Adi ever remembered having seen it, and said that a gigantic disaster would overwhelm the world and wipe out 3/4 of mankind. Adi was deeply stirred, not only by the anguish on Baba's face, but also because he spontaneously dictated these words immediately on emerging from his seclusion, as if the work done during that seclusion had been specifically related to the word passion of which he spoke." End quote. 9 years later, in September 1954, Baba, describing his death, parent, which must be violent, end of parent, stating, quote, "Before I break my silence, or immediately after it, 3/4 of the world will be destroyed."
Thanks, Chloe. Marion, could you unmute and continue, please?
Here, I might mention a letter from India in which was enclosed an account of the last stay of the must Nilkant with Baba. On previous visits, the must in question had always preserved silence, but this time, on that momentous date, the 10th July, 1958, it is the date celebrated annually by Baba's followers, since it is the date when the master first became silent in 1925. The must on this occasion began to talk, meaningless talk for the most part, in which his listeners could understand little, except odd words here and there spoken in English, Hindi, Bengali, and Urdu languages. Then from the mutterings to himself, the following remarks have been elicited and translated from Hindi as follows, quote, "The earth will split, men will become helpless and shelterless, like beasts roaming on a plateau. Men will die in large numbers and will take birth again quickly. Due to forced circumstances, men will be compelled to eat grass and leaves. Old human habitations will be wiped out, and new ones will be established. The use of the indigenous languages like Hindi will be replaced by the English tongue. Rites, rituals, and ceremonies will be eliminated. A very big cloud will appear."
Let's see what that asterisk refers to. Oh,
So this is the asterisk. As we know, similar prophetic remarks have been made by some of Baba's other musts, quite apart from the current prophecies relating to the speedy end of our world. We know that if a hydrogen bomb should drop on the oily depths of the Pacific Ocean, it is quite possible that the American continent might split into two. Max Heindel, who founded the Rosicrucians Fellowship in Southern California, foretold in 1917 that so great an explosion would occur between 1950 and the end of this century that America would split into two, and he knew nothing of the hydrogen bomb. It is difficult for us to understand how such a cosmic catastrophe can take place. From what we are able to glean through folklore, mythology, and legends, some now confirmed by recent geological research, there is ample evidence to show that great catastrophes changing the surface of the earth have always happened and will always happen, in which only a few of mankind are left to carry on the human race. We see that the records in the Bible begin with Noah and the flood, for nothing is mentioned prior to that event. Established orthodox ideas in science are always difficult to uproot until new ideas, considered heretical at the time, come along and prove so strong that previous established notions lose their hold. The old ideas that the universe was governed by the principle of stability, along with the theory of uniformity and the Darwinian conception of evolution through continuity, are giving way before recently discovered facts that conflict with these hypotheses. Oh, sorry, I read that incorrectly. The old ideas that the universe was governed by the principle of stability, along with the theory of uniformity and the Darwinian conception of evolution through continuity, are giving way before recently discovered facts that conflict with these hypotheses. Geological and archaeological discoveries suggest that the axis of the earth has been repeatedly changed over and over again, even within the lifetime of historical man. The reason why our history goes back so very short a time may be that the constant changes in the Earth's crust obliterate all but the comparatively recent traces of man's occupation of the Earth. The works of Velikovsky like those of the archaeologist Claude Schaefer and others, have clearly shown that repeated transformation of the Earth's surface have never been the work of man, but are due to gigantic catastrophes, which have changed the crust of the planet and which happen suddenly following upon external cosmic disturbances. Another gigantic catastrophe has to come. It will not be caused by the hydrogen bomb, but may come from the celestial spheres. Indeed, can it be otherwise? Our planet is hopelessly overcrowded, and if nuclear explosions are allowed to persist much longer, then surely the whole atmosphere will be poisoned. As it is, we know now that there are enough nuclear weapons and bombs stacked up in the various countries to blow up the whole world in a few hours. Surely something has to happen, and soon, to stop the present destructive trend. Man cannot be allowed to commit slow suicide by the gradual poisoning of himself and his planet. For his journey through creation is not yet finished. So, some form of divine intervention has to take place to put an end to our present chaotic civilization and bring in the new world order. No matter what we may believe, it is obvious that our world is now passing through the most critical phase of its known history, and the trend is towards an explosive climax. For unrelieved world tensions cannot continue forever. There is a theory that disturbances on a cosmic scale are caused by the planet being out of joint, having lost its equilibrium. This state of unbalance is being caused by a world lack of mental and spiritual poise. Such disharmony is not in accord with the divine pattern or rhythm of the universe, which is dependent on the vibrational quality and power of the cosmic tone, which again depends on the mind of man. Thus, we need a new vibration, a new tuning of our consciousness. If we are to have another dispensation of the one and only truth, that God is love. Meher Baba has also made it very clear that when he breaks his silence and utters the one word or sound vibration, he will lay the foundation for that which is to take place during the next 700 years, and that when he comes again as the Avatar, 700 years hence, the evolution of consciousness will have reached a certain peak, so that the materialistic tendencies of today will have disappeared and the world will be united in a real brotherhood of love and truth. And this will be the longed for golden age.
Thanks, Marian. Miguel, could you unmute and continue?
Did not my dreams tell of the slowly advancing wave of destruction which has to engulf our civilization? Was I not told that God was now going to speak? Also, that there was no way of escape from the oncoming doom except through the pyramid-shaped hill of our higher consciousness? Let us turn to the Redeemer in our higher consciousness. Let us turn to the Redeemer in our hour of need. Remember also, when there was doubt, the answer came straight from heaven, the divine rays of a love who know not on earth. And let me repeat that phrase, the divine rays of a love we know not on earth. Those who understand the esoteric signification of Christ's death on the cross know that when Jesus cried out the creative word of God, the avataric spirit gushed forth in the Savior's blood, redeeming and regenerating the whole of creation. Thus, the foundation of the Christian dispensation came into being, and the chosen ones were illumined with the glory of the Father, and every living creature partook of the divine upliftment. When the Savior was preparing for the crucifixion, he was no doubt thinking that his work on earth for humanity was drawing to its close, and that he will again be himself in the impersonal aspect of divinity, when he prayed, "Glorify thou me with thine own self, with glory which I had with thee before the world was." The avatars were all, inside quotes, before the world was. They are beings enshrouded in impenetrable mystery. The avatar could say to his chosen few, inside parentheses, even the perfect ones, inside quotes, even the perfect ones and the saints understand me not. Then how can ye fathom me? The holder of the present title of avatar became perfect when God became I am God. Thus the avatar achieved the universal mind as the master. In the Bible we read, as I quote, "In the beginning was the world, and the world was with God. The Word was made flesh," is a reincarnation of the avatar. Krishna explains, "Albeit I be, unborn, undying, indestructible, the Lord of all things living, not the less by Maya, by my magic which I stamp on floating nature forms, the primal vast, I come, and go and come. I make and unmake this universe. Than me there is no other master, prince, no other maker. All these hang on me, as hangs a row of pearls upon its string. I am the fresh taste of the water. I, the silver of the moon, the gold of the sun, the word of worship in the Veda, the thrill that passeth in the ether, and the strength of man's shed seed. I am the good, sweet smell of the moistened earth. I am the fire's red light. Undying, whence had sprung whatever is, whence had sprung whatever is. Hard it is to pierce the veil divine of various shows which hideth me. They who worship me pierce it and pass beyond. That's an asterisk that says that is from the Bhagavad Gita. It's above. It was at the end of the other page, the asterisk. Right, Bhagavad Gita 4:6. The old dispensation is
Whoops.
nearing.
Sorry.
The old dispensation is nearing its end, and a new dispensation again comes into being. The manifestation of the present avatar will redeem and regenerate our tired and tortured world. For God's recurring creative impulse will again repeat and assert the word. In the Bible, it says, quote, "And it should come to pass in the last days, said God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your young men should see visions, and your old men should dream dreams." End of the quote. When the Redeemer, Meher Baba, utters his divine cry, the word, the creation will move, and the chosen ones will be illumined with the glory of the Father. Inside parentheses, self-realization. And every creature will partake of the cosmic outpouring of the Spirit. Inside quotes, and all things should be made new. Also inside quotes, and the heavens will be removed as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island move out of their places. End of the quote. This final chapter may be concluded by quoting what Meher Baba has to say on the, as I quote, travail of the New World Order. This is a chapter in the Discourses. Quote, "The world storm, which has been gathering momentum, is now having its greatest outburst, and in reaching its climax, it will work universal disaster. In the struggle for material well-being, all grievances have assumed fantastic proportions, and the diverse differences of human interests have been so accentuated that they have precipitated distinctive conflicts. Humanity has failed to solve its individual and social problems, and the evidence for this failure is but too plain. The incapacity of men to deal with the problems constructively and creatively reveals a tragic deficiency in the right understanding of the basic nature of man and the true purpose of life. The world is witnessing an acute conflict between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. On the one hand, there are selfish persons who seek their happiness blindly through lust for power, unbridled greed, and unrelieved hatred. Ignorant of the real purpose of life, they have sunk to the lowest level of civilization, and they bury their higher selves in the wreckage of crumbling forms that linger on from the dead past. Bound by material interests and limited conceptions, they are forgetful of their divine destiny. They have lost their way, and their hearts are torn by the ravage of hate and rancor. On the other hand, there are persons who unveil their inherent higher selves through the endurance of pain and deprivation, and through noble acts of bravery and self-sacrifice. The disease of selfishness in mankind will need a cure, which is not only universal in its application, but drastic in nature. It is so deep-rooted that it can be uprooted only if it is knocked down from all sides. Real peace and happiness will dawn spontaneously when there is a purging of selfishness. The peace and happiness which come from self-giving love are permanent. Even the worst sinner can become great saints if they have the courage and sincerity to invite a drastic and complete change of heart. The present chaos and destruction will engulf the whole world, but this will be followed by a very long period in which there should be no war, The passing sufferings and miseries of our times will be worth enduring for the sake of the long period of happiness which is to follow. What will the present chaos lead to? How will it end? It can only end in one way. Mankind will be sick of it all. Man will be sick of wanting and sick of fighting out of hatred. Greed and hate will reach such intensity that everyone will become wary of them. The way out of the deadlock will be found through selflessness. The only alternative which will bring a solution will be to stop hating and to love, to stop wanting and to give, to stop dominating and to serve. Great suffering should awaken great understanding. Supreme suffering fulfills its purpose and yields its true significance when it awakens exhausted humanity and stirs within it a genuine longing for real understanding. Unprecedented suffering leads to an unprecedented spiritual outcome. It contributes to the construction of life on the unshakable foundation of the truth. It is now time that universal suffering should hasten humanity to the turning point in its spiritual history. It is now time that the very agonies of our times should become a medium for the bringing in of a real understanding of human relationship. It is now time for humanity to face squarely the true causes of the catastrophe which has overtaken it. It is time to seek a new experience of reality.
Thanks, Miguel. We'll pick up here, top of page 261 next time.